All right. Shines, you were in a meeting right now, huh?
Yeah, just had an alliance meeting with Initiative, so just out of that.
Very, very good. Thanks for joining, man. I know uh I didn't for everyone out there, I had zero pre-show talk with Shines. So let's see if I ask some uncomfortable questions, Shines. I'll try to. Um the question the first right out the bat, right? I asked you about 3 weeks ago, hey Shines, you want to come on my show? And your response was, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. And that was right after the nerf happened, or the quote unquote fix nerf happened to Redding. How are you feeling now? Are you feeling better, Shines?
That was a very touch and go day, I'm afraid. um, yeah, it's look, changes got made. I'm happy. Obviously, when the change happened, the patch came out on a Friday. Didn't feel very good. There was a lot going on at the time. Uh, but I do think CCP have gotten the message, so I'm happy from that point of view. But obviously, some changes still need to be made, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for everyone out there that doesn't know Shines, Shines is on the CSM with me. So we talk at least once a week in sometimes very exciting, sometimes more boring CSM meetings, and he's also the leader of the initiative, which Shines. I just looked it up. Member wise, the fourth largest alliance in Eve Online nowadays.
Yeah, we're getting chunky. We were 4 or 5 thousand man alliance 3 years ago, and now we're 2021. And then if you count our other alliance, the initiates, it's around 22, 23,000, I think.
That's pretty impressive. For my audience is not all null people. So for those that don't know, how did it, like what changed from 2 or 3 years ago being a 5,000 person alliance to now over 20,000?
Um, so 3 years ago, actually 3 years ago, nearly to the day, the big World War B war ended, where basically Imperium got invaded by hostile alliances, Pappy.
Hmm.
And as a result of that, like the fallout was certain alliances kind of fell apart. Whenever somebody loses a war or they lose their home, they will kind of members will move to another group usually. And I think Initiative was lucky enough that we came out of the last war with quite a good reputation, and we picked up a lot of really good people on the way.
And to all traders out there that watch this channel a lot, one thing uh, that put in it on the map, I think, for a lot of people, is you were the, or correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the first ones to leave the TTT treaty or deal. Is that right?
Yes and no. We were never officially part of the deal as
Hmm.
Initiative. We were part of the deal as the Imperium.
Yep.
So we couldn't pull the Imperium from the deal, but we did stop accepting the ISK. And then obviously when we left the Imperium, we were no longer part of that deal at all.
And has that been a big change for the initiative? So, you know, being part of it, or being even if you were not the active part of it, but pulling out of that agreement, what kind of change does that mean for an alliance like the initiative?
Um, in terms of ISK and stuff, we were getting probably somewhere between 50 and 70 billion ISK a month from it. So for an alliance that doesn't have any renters, as a passive income source, it was a fairly it wasn't like it wasn't the biggest hit, but it was a hit to our income. But for me personally, and for a lot of Init members, just the kind of the agreement behind it, while also getting evicted by the people we were in the agreement with, just didn't feel good.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's healthy for the game. So yeah, just didn't want to be a part of it, basically.
Yeah, for everyone that doesn't know the TTT or the history of the TTT, there's a podcast episode I did with Villy, who was running the TTT alliance uh, back then, and more or less nowadays still. But I did an interview with him about, oh god, 3 or 4 years ago. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. But let's go back to nowadays. So you said you're feeling much better about it now. What is about Equinox now? What are the parts that you're feeling really good about, and what do you think still needs some work?
In terms of the overall patch, I would say the best change out of it is number one, the Metanox moon drills, um, because of the passive income that they will generate for groups. So, like I said earlier, my own alliance, the initiative, we don't have any rental income like PanFam or some of those other big groups would have. So we rely on taxes from our members, market taxes being one of them, actually.
Yeah.
Um, so the ability to drop these new metanoxes that don't require people to mine the ores themselves, so we have an automated system, is a big deal for us in terms of alliance income. So for groups like Initiative, groups like especially the low sec groups, I think like Snuffed Out, Deepwater Hooligans, all of these groups who are very PvP focused. It's a big improvement for those, like for groups like that. So I'm really, really happy to see CCP do it, and the way in which they've done it, the changing of the mechanics from auto repair timers to manual repair timers, and then no damage caps and stuff is something I'm really, really happy about because, I mean, I've been in FC&E for over a decade now. I remember what it was like to go out and ref stuff with dreads without damage cap, and the content that they can lead to. So all like basically everything around those has just been a really positive change, in my opinion.
And
Um,
ratting and mining, which I guess are the other two big components of cash generation and all.
yeah, so we could see when the changes first came through, we upgraded our best systems in Fountain, and immediately we could see an increase in the ratting taxes that we generate as an alliance based purely off these. So I got very excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the patch came through, which changed all of that. So I feel like people got to see heaven a little bit, and now that has been taken away, which is very hard to deal with from a player and a leadership, and even from CCP's point of view, because people had a taste of the good stuff, and that has now unfortunately been toned down, which is probably had to be done anyway, but it's still a shame. But in terms of what Solve was like before Equinox, I do think it's an improvement. I do think it needs to be significantly more of an improvement, though. Um, so I'm hoping that CCP continues to iterate on that. I am happy that they made changes with the mining sites and stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure. I'll probably have to bow to your knowledge on that, how it's going
Mm-hmm.
to affect the economy and markets and stuff like that. But just in terms of enjoyment for players in the game, buffing these sites up, making them feel valuable, making people feel like their time is valued is something I'm hoping CCP do.
I mean, one parameter by which you can gauge how successful it is or has been, if you look at the average market price and you look at the average raw moon material market price, and it's almost 10% under what it was before, or under 52-week average, which means that people are expecting there to be more and cheaper raw moon materials, and that's clearly, as you are as well, people being positive about the passive moon mining component of it. Minerals, on the other hand, in the last month, mineral prices, so raw mineral prices rose 5%. So there's really no direct impact yet of the Equinox changes to mining. But part of it, I mean, you know this better than I do, but part of it might be that not everything has been upgraded yet, or not all alliances are uh, jumped in day one and
Yeah,
upgraded everything, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a big risk for the alliance, regardless of which alliance it is. It is a risk to upgrade your space because changes are still being made. Um, Obviously, Equinox, when it came out first, changes were made basically the same day. more changes followed, more changes followed after that. So to upgrade your space without certainty, uh, alliances love certainty. We don't
Hmm.
like uncertainty when it comes to the day to day things. So, what can I provide for my members and how do I do it consistently is a very important question that alliances have to ask themselves, because if you can't provide a base level of entertainment for people, why would they stay with your group? You know, so alliances love consistency, reliability, and unfortunately, the Equinox didn't bring much of that um, at the start, at least. So, you like at least for us, we're upgrading more space now. We've said that as soon as it becomes viable, we'll start to upgrade, and that's what we're doing, at least in our little region in Fountain. Um, so I'm hoping, at least for us, for our local economy, we're going to see a pretty significant change in mineral supply and moon goose supply and stuff like that. So fingers crossed, but we'll see.
Yeah. So I know we're both skirting NDAs here, but in terms of one reaction that we saw immediately from CCP, that everyone saw on the patch side, is that they did see the community uproar around the quote unquote ratting respawn timer fix, and reacted very, very quickly this time. And I think, if there is something positive about Equinox coming out, is that there was quick iteration on something that I think the entire community said they missed in the first pass. So I for one am quite positive on that, and that they are going to continue to reiterate and iterate on these levers that they can pull to make things more valuable, because nobody has an interest of people not upgrading their space because it's worse than before. I mean, that looks terrible for CCP as well, and they don't want that either.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean the NDA thing is a bit of a tough one. I obviously have strong feelings on this that I can't really approach too much. I am happy that CCP got the message, both from CSM and from other sources. And then, look, all we can do is wait and see. I am a big fan of CCP. Sorry, one sec.
No
I'm
worries.
a big fan of CCP. I think they are, despite all the negative comments, that like, they are one of the better companies out there, and I want to see them succeed. But I do think some marks were missed here, but I am confident that like it's nothing that's not fixable, right? And the important thing is that it gets fixed. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah, clearly it's one thing influencing the caution that CCP is showing here is that they're so scared of returning to um that Rorkel era 5-6 years ago, right? You can see it in everything they do. You don't have to be on the CSM to see that, in terms of, okay, we're bringing out new content, we're bringing out a new soft system, we're bringing out new ways of passive income, new ways of active income. And CCP, if they have the chance to dial it careful, or dial it to 11, right, they are erring on the side of careful every single time now. And um and probably overdoing it a little bit, because they're so scared of what happened 5-6 years ago, which I know, for you, I think you're one of the people that are quite vocal about liking that period of Eve, right?
I mean, yes and no. Like when you can buy a Hell, a supercarrier, for 8 billion ISK, you know there's a problem, right? So
Yeah.
I absolutely accept that. But unfortunately, there was a couple of things, and this tends to be the case with Eve, no matter what you do. One single change doesn't just affect one thing, it affects many things. And during the Rorqual era, what we loved about it, what I loved about it, is that I could form a fleet when I get home from work. I could spend 20 minutes scouting an area, and then I could reliably put 200 people in kickies on 10 rorquals. There would be 10 rorquals out in a belt. And our biggest issue was how would we keep 10 rorquals tackled? And then it evolved from that into, well, if we keep 2 rorquals alive, they're going to bring a response fleet. And now we can kill the response fleet instead. So there was a way to generate content. And that was what I loved about the Rorqual era, is that it was super reliable content. It was lots of fun. It did get a little bit repetitive, but overall it was fun, right? Never mind the insane amount of minerals that were being pumped into the game and seeing prices come down. But I think what you said is exactly right. Insofar that the CCP are terrified that it's going to come back to that. I think everybody is to an extent. But yes, I think I think there is probably a lot more leeway than they realize to allow us get back to a point where it's not overpowered, but it's still powerful enough to feel good, you know?
Yeah, and I think they are so far away from 5 or 6 years ago that the risk is quite low. But it's I think it feels to me, looking at even before I joined the CSM, looking from the outside onto CCP, it feels a lot like there's a very much a top-down directive that says, look, whatever you do, make sure you have, make sure you don't overdo it. Make sure if you can go, conservative versus a bit risky, make sure you always go conservative. I think it's clear in so many of the little actions that they do that, I think, CCP, if you're listening, I think you can loosen up a little bit. I think it'll be okay. In terms of ship pricing, right? You mentioned some examples there, but so I think you'd probably agree that if we look at dread pricing, that's not the problem right now, right? Dreads are pretty fairly priced and they can be used, and we see them being used a lot, and their value per ISK is quite good. What we are seeing definitely is super capitals being completely out of whack and way too expensive, and something needs to happen there. Is that your take as well?
Yes and no. I think regular capital prices are manageable, but manageable in that way that you're only able to just about tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think prices on capitals could come down maybe 25-30%, and
Mm-hmm.
that would put them into a healthy place. Especially faxes. Faxes are very expensive for what they do. Faxes, I think, are viewed as one of those, so force auxiliaries, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
they're viewed as one of those problem childs, probably a bit unfairly. So I would like to see, I think somewhere between 25-30% reduction in costs on capitals should put them in a fairly good place. Supers and Titans, they're just completely out of whack at the moment. Like you're looking at about 55 billion for an Aeon hull, never mind the fit. So that could climb up to 65-70 billion ISK for a fully fit super. That figure is too high. If the hull price was, let's say 24, 25, and then another 5-6 bill on top of that for the fitting, set them at around 30 billion ISK. That's still 3 times what they were. Well, 2 times what they were at the height of scarcity. I think that's a good change, especially when you compare what they can do versus what a dread can do now as well. Dreads are very powerful compared to supers and titans. And then with Titans, I think you're looking at about 200, 205 billion ISK for a Titan hull at the moment. Again, that needs to be closer to 100, 110, and I think that'd be a good place for them. It's expensive, but it's not unachievable.
I think that even CCP agrees on that, based on past conversations I've had with them, even here on stream. I think that certainly, we're looking at raw moon materials. They're now, already down 10% since Equinox on average. I think they could come down more. If we look at raw materials, we still or raw minerals, basic minerals, we still have a very, very high isogen price, which is partly to blame for very high capital and super capital prices. So I think that my personal opinion is that I think CCP expected those, the Equinox changes to have a bigger impact, and I still think that we're going to see lower raw material prices, and we're going to see cheaper capitals down the line. I think 20 to 25% drops are realistic, I think, for regular capitals. Super capitals, I don't know. We'll see where they go. But even when they've removed gas completely from faction holes now, sub capital faction holes now, right? And gas prices basically have dropped 30 to 40% across the board, because there's simply almost no use for gas anymore. And so I think, if we just see a fraction of that from other mineral types, then we're going to be fine.
Oh,
But
fingers crossed.
yeah, one thing that you mentioned earlier about, waiting to upgrade space, that, obviously I'm looking at large alliances like yours, and I hear you, on the meta show talking about waiting to upgrade, or even baiting other alliances into upgrading and that sort of stuff. And it's, my first thought there is that, as an alliance leader, like, and even as a CSM member, right? You look at a new expansion, and you know that at some point there's there's going to be a deadline that you're going to have to upgrade your space anyway, because CCP is not going to introduce a new, a new content type or new mechanic without wanting people to actually use it. And so you have to assume that if it's not attractive, they're going to make it attractive in the midterm, or otherwise all hell is going to break loose. So take me through that decision, that decision path there for you as an alliance leader. Do you really, were you really unsure whether it was going to be more profitable in the end, or are you just trying to maximize your alliance income by waiting until you're absolutely sure this is going to be worth it?
It's not really anything to do with alliance income. It's more to do with alliance members. So we have, in our peak time zone, we have about 1,800 people logged in on every given day. Obviously, that's accounts, not individual people, but we have a lot of people logged in. They're in our space. They're doing things. They're, like I said earlier, there has to be something there for them to do. And with Equinox, there was a couple of trade-offs that everybody could see from the start. Certain systems couldn't be jammed. You couldn't put a jump bridge in every system, so internal jump bridge networks. And when I say internal jump bridge networks, I mean jump bridge networks in your immediate home area, not ones that extend over 3 or 4 regions. So internal home jump bridge networks were going to take a major hit, because you couldn't put jump bridges in in every third system, basically. On top of that, the reagent costs that now came with things like jump bridges, super building arrays, all of this gets factored in. So there is a balance somewhere between what can I upgrade that's worth it, but that isn't going to reduce my members' quality of life while living in this area. To give you an example, in Fountain and Cloud Ring, so that we hold 2 constellations in Cloud Ring to connect us to LOSEC, we have 37 jump bridge connections in our region. That means that from our staging system, you can get to any system in Fountain within 5 jumps, which is a very it's a very vast jump bridge network. It allowed people to get around our space very quickly. It was a massive quality of life thing. That has been gutted with Equinox. So from 37 jump bridge connections, we'll go down to somewhere between 5 and 10. So
Because of
that,
the limitation of resources in your
correct,
systems, right?
correct. What I said earlier, alliances love consistency and reliability. If I can't reliably keep 10 jump bridges online, like 10 jump bridge connections, so 20 jump bridges, yeah, I'm not going to be able to if I can't fuel them myself, I won't be able to run them. So really the question is, what is what is it going to take to convince me to remove that jump bridge network? And the changes that came out initially with the instant respawn were the instant respawn mechanic was enough of a change to make me say, okay, we can do without the jump bridges. Let's get this in ASAP. I knew kind of quietly that the mining stuff would be fixed, not because of anything CCP said, but just because of how terrible they were at the start, like rock size, it just not being fun gameplay for people who like mining. Um, I kind of knew that there would be a change somewhere down the line with those, so we kind of just upgraded those with the expectation that there would be a change for the better. And as it worked out, there was. So that kind of paid off. But yeah, I mean, essentially, what Equinox brings is a reduction in travel quality of life around a region, but what should be an increase in day-to-day activities, or a buff to day-to-day activities. And unfortunately, what came out at the start was not a buff to day-to-day activities, and then with the change to the instant respawn, it got significantly worse very quickly. Um, So I would say when the patch started, it was pretty straightforward. Upgrade the routing systems, upgrade some mining systems, and leave whatever jump bridges you can. Now it's kind of, well, upgrade some routing systems, upgrade some mining systems, keep your jump bridge network as intact as possible. Which to me is a failure of the patch. Like on day one, we should be racing to upgrade all of our space, every single piece of it. Anything else is you know, means that the patch has not been well received, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And was probably the main reason why CCP reacted rather quickly to change some of that, and will probably tweak it a little bit more. In terms of, what I'm interested in is, I saw your recent streams on Twitch on the way that you guys decided on what systems you were going to upgrade, et cetera, which is super interesting for someone that is looking at it, from the outside in, and is trying to understand how alliances make their decisions. It also looked like a hell of a lot of work. Is this, would you agree that Equinox has just added a ton more work for alliance leadership? Not only in the, or is it just in the upgrade phase now, or is this in the long run going to just add a lot of more administrative tasks to an alliance leaderships?
Um, it's a little bit of both. So, in initiative, and I know in a lot of other alliances, we have alliance teams, which are essentially government departments. And some will be in charge of taxation, some will be in charge of ship replacement schemes, others are in charge of fueling, infrastructure, etc. All of our teams that are tied to managing solve, so maintaining structures, fueling structures, etc., they have all doubled in size since Equinox. So if we
Okay.
had 10 people running the region before, we now have 20 people running
Wow.
it. So from that point of view, the workload has increased, or at least the expectation of a workload has increased to the point where we feel we need more people to manage it all efficiently. From a an administration point of view, yes, the initial planning out your region, etc., was tough. I know that CCP have a nice tool in game for it, but like with many things, and this is, I would say, at no fault of CCP's, but like with many things, some of this stuff is just visualized better through other tools.
Yeah.
I used Excel. I drew up a Docland map of Fountain of our space, and I was able to manipulate the information that I needed that way. I'm a very visual learner. So being able to see exactly what effect putting an upgrade here, how would that affect the next system, etc. That was very important to me. So It was a lot of work, but I feel like it was worth it.
You
Um,
didn't use the Excel add-in though, right?
oh no, I did. Yeah, yeah.
You did? Nice.
I used the Vixel add-in. It's pretty cool.
Very good.
Um, but the only thing to keep in mind is that's looking at space from a stable peacetime point of view. So I was able to know with certainty that I hold all of these systems. I can upgrade and make these systems interact with each other. And it was a lot of work, but it was kind of fun. Obviously, I streamed a lot of it, which was a lot of fun as well, getting input from people. But I am very, very, very concerned about having to do that on a war footing.
Mhm.
So if we get invaded, having to try and quickly figure out how systems are going to interact with each other if we lose two systems. So if we lose this system and it's feeding population into here, how can we do this? And the crossover is fairly significant. So yeah, the workload has gone up significantly.
The interesting part of that, like, I mean, there certainly is a game, like a strategic aspect to this that is very interesting, and that sounds a lot of fun. Yet, is restricted probably in game to a handful of people in each alliance, right? Do you feel like that's a problem in the long term, or do you feel like, well, most line members are probably not interested in having to do that anyway?
Um, so most alliances in Eve are dictatorships, right? Like there's
Yeah,
no democracy in
clearly.
Eve. Yeah. Um, there is a time to get opinions from people, and there is a time that everybody just needs to stay quiet and kind of let the leader do what they need to do. In this case, it's me. Previous to me, it would have been Bliss. So I'm not trying to say it's just about me or anything, but like sometimes quick decisions just need to be made, and that's made by one or two people. Um, so from that point of view, I don't think it's a big issue that like your average player sees this side of things because you know Intel doesn't go to its massive employee base and ask everybody for their opinion on things. Maybe they should, but um, that's kind of how we look at it. So sometimes it just needs to be kept to a small group. But the reason that I streamed at the time was a big part of it was to try and give people insight into how things were happening, why were they happening, what did it look like, because it is an aspect of the game that not many people get to see, and I think it's okay for people to look in and see it, but not necessarily have any influence on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that was why I mentioned your stream, because I thought, hey, this is so interesting and so unique, right? That I'm almost sad that it's a it's a big part of an expansion that really only a few people get to interact with. And the way that works and why that works is because you hope that, yes, at the top it's just a few people interacting with it, but then it should create a lot of content for the rest of Eve, because it's a new mechanic, because it's an interesting mechanic. And so, having looked at 4 or 5 weeks now of um, skyhooks or metanox and this new system, do you feel like it has a lot of potential to create content? Like, are people rating skyhooks? Is that a part of it working? Is it interesting?
Yeah, definitely. I think Metanoxes, especially the mechanics around them, are for bigger alliance. There's a lot of options there to drag people out to try and to get people to come out of their stations and to fight, which I think Eve has been missing. Like Eve has not had mechanics like these for years
Hmm.
when pauses kind of got removed as the passive R64 miners. Um, so I am very excited to see what groups do with those. It's not going to be instantaneous. All right, these things need a bit of time for people to learn the mechanics, learn what works, learn what doesn't work, etc. Um, and then in terms of smaller gang PvP, the skyhooks really, I think, have been a success. Probably too much so. And as an alliance leader, like I do have strong feelings on how overpowered the skyhooks are towards people who come in and steal them. because of our now new heavy reliance on the things that they produce. So I think from a content point of view, they definitely hit the mark, but from an overall balance point of view, they need a bit of work. So um, and I think, look, with Equinox overall, there's been a lot of negativity around it. Equinox itself, I think, it's not like everything that was released in it was fine. It was just the tuning that was wrong, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I think I think all this stuff is fixable, which is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Except for Skinner. Just kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know you don't. I don't. You're not a Skinner user, I presume. Are you?
no, I want to use Skinner, um, but there were a couple of issues around ESI things with the new skins, and that basically, from day one I said no, I'm not going to use this. And I want to be like clear on my stance on this. I am happy that CCP is monetizing skins the way that they are. I think, again, I think Skinner is great. I think the monetization around Skinner is not great. There are other ways that revenue could be raised without what I personally would consider to be quite predatory charges on, like the 30% tax, or now 20%, whatever it is, and the click,
Acceleration. Yeah.
yeah, the acceleration and the skills around it. I mean, I personally just don't agree that this is like cosmetics are an industry mechanic the same way building a ship is. I just don't see it, and I'll probably never see it. I think people should be able to just go in, fool around with it, play some Plex, get their skin, make CCP rich, make Eve colorful, and everyone be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Skinner, and to some extent also the Hypernet is, I feel like, are products of Pearl Abyss. You know, when people always ask, "Oh, you know, isn't CCP now completely owned and controlled by Pearl Abyss?" And which, yes, they are owned. I don't. When I'm talking to CCP people, I never feel like they're much influenced by Pearl Abyss at all. But when you look when you look at things like Skinner and the acceleration through Plex, then I do. I mean, I wasn't a skins person before. I'm not going to be now, and I am very skeptical that in this shape it will ever be successful in the way that they're going to be, quote unquote, artists that are going to be able to profitably, consistently create skins and share them in the alliance, etc., etc. So, in, in that respect, but I also don't feel like, I feel like Skinner isn't hurting, uh right? It's, as you say, it's cosmetics. It's I don't think it's a good look for the game, but it's easy enough to just ignore it, and a lot of people apparently a lot of people are just doing just that, just ignoring it.
I think if it had come out in the same patch as the faction warfare stuff, which was very well received, it probably wouldn't be getting the hate that it's getting right now. But the fact that it came out in Equinox, where there was a lot of other things that were disliked, it's probably it's just one more thing on top of a few other things, right?
You're probably right. Although I have to say, I mean, early days Equinox Reddit versus now Reddit is day and night, right? I mean, nowadays, the last few weeks, there have been very, very, very few negative posts about Equinox mechanics, because I feel like that patch 3 weeks ago where they made the rocks a little bit bigger, they lowered respawn timers a little bit, etc., etc. I think that that showed the player base enough good intent on CCP's side that they feel like they have hope again, that Equinox will be. Now, player numbers aren't that great right now, but hopefully that's just the typical summer slump that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to judge it properly at the minute, but I think around September, October, we'll really see what effect it's had.
Yeah, especially if we're gonna see some nullsec wars. Are those on the horizon, Shines?
Uh, as the official neutral states representative of the game, I have no idea. Um,
Well, everyone loves wars. Like there's really no I don't have to say wars. I mean, we've seen some large battles in the last, or at least some large forum ups in the last few weeks. It seems like because I was on vacation, I was pretty much just following Eve through Reddit. But at least there's the potential for large battles right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, so this is the thing. I feel like there is definitely a hunger for big fights where all like both sides go all in on trades and then everyone just goes home and does it again in a month's time. So I think from that point of view, there's a lot of hunger for that from everybody, not just one side or the other. I think for an all-out full-scale invasion, there is probably very little appetite for it. Um, there's too much uncertainty around Sov and Equinox at the moment. Nobody is going to want to do anything prior to November. Even after November, we'll all be in this new system. People are going to be feeling it out. I might be wrong on this. I don't see any major shifts happening, with that. Um, Leading a war, FCing in a war, those kind of things are very, very time intensive and stressful. So trying to dedicate all that energy to invading somebody else while you're also spending all that energy trying to deal with stuff at home, it's not a good setting for war. But I do think that Metanoxes and that will be single point content generation, if that makes sense. You'll see fights on those, but you won't see any major wars, I don't think.
Yeah, at least what since I missed essentially the last 2 weeks of even came back to look at the markets basically today. Ship prices on average overall in all of Eve have dropped more than 3% in the last 3 weeks. Now 3% doesn't sound a lot, but moon materials getting cheaper has a big effect on T2 ships, right? And so overall, I think ship prices are moving in the right direction. If we get some more passive income, if possibly mining anomalies get fixed to a point where we can see a significant drop in isogen prices, which would help a lot, then I think the result is going to be a lot more trigger happy null alliances because you'll have more income and cheaper ships.
Yep.
Cool. Shines, thanks for stopping by today. Is there anything any last words you want to say in terms of I don't know, recruiting for line? I imagine the initiative is always recruiting.
The initiative is always recruiting. Yes, we are indeed. If people are interested in trying out nullsec and are semi-competent at the game, everybody is more than welcome. Or if not, then I'm always happy to see people playing the game because it means we can shoot them. So thanks for having me on. It's been awesome, and I do love the show. So it's been a real pleasure.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Shines. See you around.